When pro players get asked for tips, usually they just say, well, push everything. And while they aren't wrong because you need to just get as much combat experience as possible, saying just push everything isn't very helpful. How do you take those fights? What are things you need to be wary of when pushing? What skills should I work on? There's a plethora of things that go into an engagement, so if we're being honest, the term W key everything or push everything is just a lazy cop-out, let's be real. So today, I'm going to give you 3 secrets pros aren't telling you that will help you to improve faster and that you can start implementing today. But if you want even more secrets, make sure you head over to the GameLeap website where I've personally made hundreds of videos just to help you improve, whether it's for aim, movement, legend abilities, positioning, and even science-based training tips. You name it, we've got it, baby. So make sure to head over and join the GameLeap fam to get instant access to all of these videos and more now. So for our first secret, might not be something you expect, but I promise you that it makes all the difference, and that is how you reload. And just a warning, you are about to hear the word reload a lot. Now, before you leave thinking I'm a crazy person, hear me out. If there is one time that you're vulnerable, it is when you are stuck in a reload animation because for that entire 2 seconds or so, you are basically a sitting duck. Now, much of the time you may get lucky and the enemy will have to reload at the same time as you. However, so many variables come into play here. Assuming you both are in the open face-to-face, if both players end up needing to reload at roughly the same time, the player who finishes the reload first is more likely to win. But we also need to remember that both aim and movement also comes into play here. The better you are at movement, then the more likely you are to draw the enemy's magazine and get them to reload first so you can shoot them during that reload. On the flip side, the more you move, the more it will affect your aim in a not so positive way. This means that it is critical that you not only take the time to work on your aim, but it is really important that you take the time to focus on your strafing movement and how you aim while strafing as well. Now, something else you need to start paying attention in regards to this matter is the enemy's animations. You can clearly see when the enemy is reloading if you actually pay attention, and you can use that information to your advantage. For example, if you're using something like Wingman, then you can pace your shots a bit more and instead put more emphasis on your movement while the enemy is shooting. Then when the enemy is reloading, you basically have around 2 seconds where you can literally just stand still and purely focus on aim if you so desire. Now, I usually don't recommend you to just stand still, but I'm just trying to make a point here. And by the way, yes, before you go writing in the comments, I am pretty aware that you can just swap weapons, but you still have to reload after that. So you need to either draw out their fire enough and win on ammo economy, then abuse their reload animation and or out-aim the other player. Now, if you know you have the ability to use movement to your advantage, then something you can do is actually reload slightly early. This significantly reduces the time it takes to reload due to a mechanic called tactical reloading. For example, when you reload a car SMG on empty, it roughly takes 2.13 seconds to complete. But when doing a tactical reload, it only takes 1.7 seconds. And you would usually do this with 1 or 2 bullets left, meaning you can deliberately put yourself in a reload animation before the enemy player in exchange for access to more damage output sooner so that you will have more of a magazine when the enemy goes into a reload. But again, you have to make sure that you are able to draw out their mag while you're doing the reload because you are basically putting yourself in a risky position to get ahead in the fight. But of course, probably the best option is to do your best to reload while in cover to avoid these open 1v1 fights when you can, but of course that can't always be helped. So be sure you are paying more attention to both your reload and the enemy's reloads, and make sure you are taking the time to improve the mechanics required to abuse this dynamic since it happens pretty often, whether or not it's by choice. Now, for our next secret, it's holding hands. This one is pretty straightforward, but for some reason, nobody really talks about it. I don't get it. And simply put, holding hands gets them bans, baby. If you watch ALGS or Predator ranked matches, one of the main things that they're doing differently than just regular pub players or anyone out platinum or below, the one thing they're doing is holding each other's hand. When you run off to the side by yourself, you are taking a risk of being isolated in exchange for a flank or to catch an enemy player by surprise, but unless you really know what you're doing, usually this leads to you coming into a 1v1 or 1v2 or even worse, a 1v3 situation. Generally, those should be avoided at all costs because why 1vx when you can 3v1? Apex is all about stacking advantages in your favor, and one of, if not the biggest advantage you can have is the advantage of numbers. Why do you think people complain so much about Predator players triple stacking in pub lobbies? Yes, of course skill comes into play here, but have you ever tried to isolate a triple stack pred team or tried to escape from them? I'll tell you now, it ain't the easiest thing to do and it's not fun. This is one of the reasons being stacked is so strong, because it is easy to correlate everyone's decision making to ensure that you are on the same page and sticking together, and well, obviously Predator players are going to be good at this. Compared to people without comms, well, everyone just kind of starts doing their own thing, and again, unless you know what you're doing, that is a quick way to put yourself at a disadvantage. Keep in mind, I'm not saying that 100% holding each other's holes for every moment of every second is the best option, but a majority of the time it will make it much more difficult for the enemy players to get an advantage on you. So basically what you need to do is pay more attention to where your teammates are and really start trying to play off of them and play with them rather than just kind of running off and doing your thing, you know what I mean? And for our final secret, it is space. If there's one thing that separates the casuals and the pros, it's how well they understand space. Now, there's a couple different ways you can handle space. You can take space by pushing, for example, or create space by falling back or pulling. And this allows you to maintain control over the entire fight. The goal here is to be proactive. Rather than reacting to an enemy's push, know when that push is about to come and already be pulling, moving, and creating that space before they even realize that they need to push. On the flip side, you need to know when to push and take control of high ground or a piece of cover. Basically, you need to take more time to try understanding enemy decision making relative to the surrounding environment. You need to focus more on being proactive rather than being reactive, because the more you have to react, the more likely it is you will make a mistake. So even when it comes to falling back or creating space, you want to be ahead of the game and put the enemies in a situation where they think they are being proactive, but in reality, they're only reacting to your movements. Remember, regardless if you are playing offensive or defensive, pushing or pulling, taking or creating space, you absolutely need to do everything in your power to be proactive and maintain the control of the fight. In the end, when it comes to improving, it almost always is going to come down to the fundamentals. The more solid you are in your fundamentals, such as simple mechanics like aim or reloading, or even to more complex fundamentals like positioning, team dynamic, and space. These are all the crucial building blocks that are truly going to bring your gameplay to a higher level. So if you aren't confident in yourself or feel that maybe you aren't reaching your full potential, always check your fundamentals and make sure that you're putting a heavy emphasis on them. Otherwise, you may end up in a situation where you think you're better than you actually are in these departments, putting your improvement to a halt until you realize what the real issue is. Trust me, I've been there more than once, and there's nothing wrong with you or I falling into that trap. We're human. That sort of thing is bound to happen. It's all about how you take that information and use it to make change. That is going to dictate how fast you are actually going to improve. This has been Johnny. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.